After so many imposters, do we finally have the new Ethereum? Is Tezos finally the project that's going to knock Ethereum off as the top smart contract platform and out of the number 2 spot in market cap? Well, today we're going to be talking about Tezos and whether or not it can achieve those goals. We're going to be talking about what Tezos is, what its makeup consists of, and some things they do well and some things that they struggle at. And we're going to look at whether or not this project is poised to finally become the new Ethereum. Easy boy! Hey guys, welcome to BitBoy Crypto, your one-stop shop for all things Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. Today, we're going to be doing a review of Tezos. I've had a lot of people in my community ask and say, hey, will you look at this project? And it's one that I kind of vaguely knew the history of. I kind of vaguely knew what it was, but it's one I haven't actually, ever delved deep into the project. So today, we're going to be doing that. Remember, this is not a super technical channel. We're very beginner friendly. So we're not going to get too deep into the technical aspects of the project. We are going to explain what it is, what it does, what makes it different. And at the end of the video, we're going to look, in my opinion, on whether or not I think this can unseat Ethereum as the top smart contract platform. So to really understand Tezos, the first thing you have to know is the way that it was launched. It was launched in not necessarily a unique way, but it had a lot of hype surrounding it. So basically, it set a record with $232 million raised during the ICO. And I know what you're saying. You're saying, well, EOS raised $4 billion. Well, Tezos did it first. So at the time, it was actually a record. However, there was a lot of, let's just say, issues around the launch. There was a huge delay. People thought that this project may never actually launch. Even though it raised all the money, it took forever. Now, one of the big reasons why it did not launch until September 8 of 2018 was because there was a huge argument, basically, a lot of problems in between the Tezos founders, Arthur and Kathleen Brightman, and the Tezos Foundation. Now, to understand the way that foundations work with crypto projects, you have to have, we all talk about decentralization, but when a project starts, you have to have some kind of pool of developers, some kind of pool of money that's going to fund the project, and that's where the foundations come into play. So the president of the Tezos Foundation was Johan Gevers, and Kathleen and Arthur Brightman had a lot of problems between themselves and Johan Gevers. And it's kind of ironic because, Kathleen has been very outspoken about that they hate politics, and yet, Tezos was actually designed to kind of be politic free, and they had right at the beginning problems with the foundation. So eventually Johan Gevers left the foundation. He was given a $400,000 settlement or a severance, to leave. And ever since then, things have been running pretty smoothly for Tezos. So the project did launch in September of 2018. So what is the main goal of Tezos? Well, directly from the website, it says, Tezos is a new decentralized blockchain that governs itself by establishing a true digital commonwealth. And, when we think of the world, right, we have different countries and borders and things like that. But when it comes to the digital world, it makes sense to have commonwealths or little communities, segments that are not separated by borders necessarily, but are almost their own self-governing digital nations. And that's really what Tezos is trying to do. They're trying to put the power of the project in the hands of the stakeholders, which we'll look at here in a little bit. They want every person that owns Tezos to play some role on the Tezos blockchain or the Tezos protocol. The token itself, the native token, is called the XTZ Token. And, this year the token has done pretty well. The price has been moving up as opposed to a lot of projects that have been moving down. And so a lot of people are very hopeful that this project can knock off Ethereum, and that when the next alt season comes, it can kind of be the leader of that. So let's talk a little bit about the architecture. Now, as you guys know, we don't get too deep into the weeds with technical aspects on this channel. I'm not a developer, but I'm going to try to explain it to the layman out there that may not understand exactly what a blockchain protocol is or anything like that. So basically, Tezos is constructed of you have two different protocols. You have the network protocol, which is actually which uses a native middleware called the network shell. Then you have your transaction and your consensus protocols, and those are combined in Tezos, and they're called the blockchain protocol. So you got the network protocol, which runs through the network shell, and then you have the blockchain protocol. When it comes to accounts, there's two different accounts. When a project launches a mainnet, you can create a mainnet account. There's two different types when it comes to Tezos. You have originated accounts, and then you also have implicit accounts. Now, the implicit accounts are like a just standard, address you would see on like an exchange, for instance. Those are going to start with TZ1. So if you ever see a TZ1 public address, that is an implicit account. The originated accounts are different. They actually start with KT1. Now, the originated accounts are the voting accounts. They're the ones that, people can stake their tokens with these delegates that have the KT1 address, and they're able to vote on the protocol. So if you have an implicit account to vote and take part in the network, you have to transfer those votes or those tokens that you're staking to an originated account. And I think anyone can get those. I don't think it's super hard to get an originated account, but you have to have one of those originated accounts to vote. So let's talk about forks for a minute. And I know what you're thinking. Why would we possibly want to talk about eating utensils? Well, they're important when it comes to crypto because we eat good because the price is going to go up one day, I'm sure. I'm just kidding. There's a lot of food references in this review, as we'll see here in a little bit. But when it comes to forks, obviously a fork is a change in a code. A hard fork, it completely changes the trajectory of a project. We've seen this with Bitcoin where they've had two major forks, Bitcoin Cash and also Bitcoin SV. Now, the thing about those forks is they were not really voted on by the community. The developers decided this was the direction they wanted to take the project, and certain developers split off and created forks. Well, as I said, Kathleen and Arthur Brightman hate politics, and so they did not like the way that the forks went down when it came to Bitcoin, and they wanted to avoid that with Tezos. So what they did is they made it a very token holder friendly platform, to which basically for Tezos to make changes to its code, the community has to be in consensus about what needs to happen. They don't have developers that can just say, you know what, I don't like what's going on, we're going to change the direction of this project. The community must take part in these votes in order to keep everything on chain with Tezos. And this is something that is different than other projects. So Tezos was kind of founded on the idea that the community owns the protocol, the community owns the project, and I love that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, later on in the video. So the consensus mechanism of Tezos is called liquid proof of stake, or LPOS. Now, you guys have probably heard of proof of stake. It's an alternative to proof of work. Proof of work, solving complicated math problems through mining in order to produce blocks and push through transactions. With Tezos, they use proof of stake. So proof of stake is basically where nodes own tokens, and through owning those tokens, they're able to push through the transactions and produce blocks, which Tezos calls something totally different. With LPOS, standing for liquid proof of stake, the idea is that the votes are more liquid. It goes back and forth between a representative system and a democracy. Users are able to delegate their tokens to other accounts, or they're able to vote with their own originated accounts. And on any whim, someone can take back their vote and put it somewhere else. Especially if there's amendments people are voting on, people can change before, there is consensus. And that's really something that is different about this project. It's not kind of set it and forget it like a lot of projects are. So when it comes to producing the blocks, the way that let's say delegated proof of stake works is before the block production process begins, all the delegates are selected, and then they fight it out to see who produces the blocks. With Tezos, it doesn't work exactly like that. Like I said, it's more liquid. So users are able to delegate or vote themselves pretty quickly. So one of the things that drives me crazy about Tezos is its need to reinvent the wheel when it comes to language surrounding blockchain. So most people in crypto understand what staking and block production are. In Tezos, they call it baking, which is a little weird to me, in my opinion. You may like it. Maybe you like it when projects go out of their way to use language that separates them. But in my opinion, it makes it more confusing for people. So if you just think of it like this, in Tezos, baking means staking. And when bakers bake, it's producing blocks. So the way that the blocks are produced is through proof of stake, like we said earlier. So the people that own Tezos tokens, XTZ tokens, are called bakers. When you take those tokens and you stake them, Tezos refers to that as baking. And to bake a block is the same thing as to produce a block, right? And just like the Muffin Man, bakers get rewarded for baking. I know you guys like that joke. It was a good one. But the long and the short of it is, if you just mentally replace the word staking with baking, the whole project makes a lot more sense, in my opinion. I really wish they wouldn't have came up with this new way to say something that we kind of already have language for. So to me, that's one of the cons of this project. And it really is just so insofar as understanding what they're talking about. Because I watched a lot of videos and read up a lot on this project before I did this review. And when I first started getting into it, I was like, what are they talking about with baking and bakers? And I'm a person that's been in crypto for a pretty good while. And so I can only imagine for newcomers into the space, trying to understand that difference. And there really isn't one. It's just changing the way that they talk about the way that blocks are produced and that the proof of stake is done. So when it comes to the computer language, Tezos was, the language of Tezos is actually something called OCaml. However, the smart contracts are coded with a computer language called Michelson. And once again, we're not going to get too technical here. You just need to understand that what Michelson allows the project to do is basically skip a step to get the coding into the Tezos virtual machine. So it basically just means things run smoother than other smart contract platforms when it comes to the virtual machine. Another thing about Michelson is it's checkable by human eye. So basically, someone can check the language, check the coding to make sure it's correct without actually having to run it through something else. So Coinbase and Binance both recently started allowing for Tezos staking. Now, Tezos is the only project on Coinbase that you can actually stake. For this reason, a lot of people started believing that this is going to be the new Ethereum. They love the way that it's coded. They love the way the governance works. And they started saying that maybe this is going to be the project that's going to lead the next bull run. It's going to knock Ethereum off as the top smart contract platform. This is what I will say about this. In my opinion, it is going to be very difficult to ever knock off Bitcoin or Ethereum. We've already seen projects that are better. We've seen projects that have much more innovation than Bitcoin. However, the problem when it comes to Bitcoin and Ethereum is they have a first mover advantage that is so hard for any project to overcome, no matter what it is doing. We've been promised the Ethereum Killer, the new Ethereum, the next Ethereum for years now. However, the developer base and the history of Ethereum are both very large. It has a lot of history. A lot of projects have ran on it. It's got a lot of DeFi, decentralized apps that are on there. It has a huge developer base. Are any of these projects like Tezos or Tron or IOST, are they ever going to be able to knock off Ethereum? And it's very questionable whether or not that will happen. However, the only way that a project is going to knock Ethereum out of that number 2 spot on CoinMarketCap or become the premier project when it comes to smart contract platforms is to build a large base. And through Tezos' ability to have better price action than other projects during the last year, that's certainly helped. It's adding to its base of developers. It's adding to its base of users. It doesn't matter if you have the greatest project on earth. If no one's using it or talking about it, then even though the protocol would be great, it's not going to matter. So during this bear market in the last several months, it's important for a project like Tezos to really continue to grow that developer base and to get the word out more about Tezos. That's the only chance any project is going to have. It's going to have to be basically a massive tidal wave that's going to push Tezos above Ethereum. And honestly, I like Tezos. I like what they're doing. I don't like the reinventing of the language, but I like the governance model, and I'm a big fan of decentralization. So I love when the communities themselves are able to play a role in the governance of a project. But for me personally, I don't know if Tezos is going to be able to get that swell of users to push it above Ethereum. But let me know what you guys think. Are you a Tezos fan? If so, drop your comments down below. Let me know, what do you think about this project is going to be able to push it past Ethereum? Or why do you think Ethereum will not be able or will not be passed by Tezos? So drop those comments down below. Merry Christmas, everybody. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. BitBoy out.